That's in the same circumstances that he was last year, as far as there's about the same amount of riders. Obviously, we got his brother and Jacob coming up, but Tomac's out, so it's Sexton looks like the main challenger again. And nothing's changed except now he's more experienced. He knows all the tracks. He's been riding a 450 all year, and he's just more confident. So I would argue he has better circumstances this year to do it than last year. But obviously, it's still going to be really hard. You have to, stay off the ground. Your bike can't break, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I actually brought that up a couple of days ago on my channel, and I asked that question, and I gave like four options. How many race wins or moto wins is Jett going to get? And so the first one being 22, and then I gave like a four race or four moto gap all the way down the rest of them. And the majority of the people were picking the third option, which was like 19 to like 15, and only 13% of the people it was like 1,300 people voted, and only 13% of them think he's going to have a perfect season. So I think people are ready to see someone beat Jett. I think they're voting with their hearts a little bit, and I think that he definitely could go undefeated. But yeah, I think the only person who's going to really challenge him is going to be Chase.
Agreed. And if this roster stays the same and we don't have Tomac and Cooper come back, it looks as if Jett is going to have a fairly easy, clean sweep of the series, unfortunately, because Sexton is super fast. I mean, Aaron is fast. Dylan, I believe, got second last year. He's fast, but he's on Phoenix Honda. Jason Anderson could potentially be up front. And Masterpool, I believe, let's go Masterpool with some podiums this year. Let's see him get some podiums on his HBI Racing, because now he's starting off on the team that he got on towards the end of the series last year. But yeah, unfortunately, the 450 class looks like the class to jump in if you were somebody like Jeff Walker that is a 3-digit number and you're looking to try to get some points, because look at how many 3-digit guys there are.
There's a lot.
Versus
I think this is going to be the summer
guys.
that I think Anderson's I think he'll have a good summer. I mean, he got through Supercross unscathed, which is the first time in a while. I think he's hungry to go outside, and I think he has something to prove. He's got that El Hombre attitude is back, and he does seem healthy. He seems happy. I think he's going to be somebody that'll shake it up. And I also think Jay Coop is going to be the guy that's going to be the one that catches everybody off guard. We know that the Yamaha platform is good. So I see Sexton having his hands full more with Jay Coop and with I'm drawing a mental blank who I just said. I'm sorry. I was just thinking about Hunter, because Hunter unfortunately won't be able to last the summer because he's still not 100% healthy, unfortunately. So you've got Jay Coop and Anderson. There you go. I think those are the two guys that are going to give Sexton the biggest fits. With Jett, you look at the races that he got bad starts and he just simply ran out of time. He wasn't able to get through the pack. I don't think he's going to have that issue at all outdoors. Wider track, longer motos. We saw last year, literally, he fell behind Kenny, got up and ran him down. And it doesn't look like he's lost any of that polish. To Shane's point, another year on the 450, that doesn't bode very well for everybody else. The only person that's going to give Jett fits is himself if he makes bonehead moves.
Yeah, no, Hunter was ending the series on a good note in Supercross, and truthfully, I think Hunter's a better MX rider than he is Supercross rider.
Yes.
So if he is healthy, that is going to be interesting. And yeah, you did leave out Justin Cooper, because this guy is actually racing for a job, I believe, because Star Yamaha doesn't have enough money to pay him, Tomac, and Cooper Webb and Deegan and the 9 other guys that are on the 250 class. So this is.
And think about it though. Where will he go? Let's kind of look at the end of the summer. Where does he go? Because you've got Prado and you've got Anderson, right, at Cowie. You've got the 2 Lawrence brothers that aren't going anywhere at Honda. Like you say, Shane, I'd have to agree. Husqvarna is the only place that really opens up for him, with the exiting of
Christian Craig's probably out.
Yeah, Christian Craig. Thank you. I was thinking Savacci, but he's at Triumph.
Yeah.
But no, I totally agree with you. Where does he go? He's fighting for a job. it just seems to make sense that he'll go to Husky, unless all of a sudden, for some oddball reason, Craig comes out and just slays everybody this year. That's the only saving grace that he could have.
They would still go after Cooper over Craig just based off of his trajectory, I think.
I agree 100%. He's young. We know he's aggressive. I mean, it wasn't, how many years ago was it now? Was it 3 years ago? He was battling for a 250 championship, or is it maybe even 1 year ago, 2 years ago? Do you know?
He's
off the
always
top of
right
your head?
there.
Yeah. And he's a better outdoor rider than he is indoors, in my opinion. And he's
100%.
almost won a Supercross indoors, or championship. Now it's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
I think
the poll is live for the chat. So if you guys give your opinion on Jetson.
What do you think about on the 250? Go ahead, Shane. Finish your thought.
So I just wanted to add a couple things real quick before before we move on from those points. So with Anderson, one thing that I am noticing is that he is taking it pretty serious. I do think he could do pretty well. I don't think that he's that good of an outdoor rider when you compare him to his Supercross. But he's still going to be right there. I think he could easily get on the podium and maybe, like you said, challenge Chase. But one thing I wanted to point out was that he did make the investment to get everyone out, including like Brock Tickle. Literally everybody went out to Club MX at the end of the season to try to make his bike, just make himself better for the ending of the East Coast Supercross rounds. And then they also stayed there and did some motocross testing on their motocross tracks. And then back at the Stopwatch Nationals, he wasn't actually racing in the race, but they had 2 30-minute practice sessions, and he was motoing those. And he was, to me, like you see everyone out there and they'll ride and pull off or they'll just moto the whole time. But if they come up on a slow rider, they just work their way around. But he was not having it. I know that's probably just his attitude, but he came in hot on a slow rider and came around the outside and was just like revving the bike like it was a real lapper in a real race. And so I think he's definitely focused. I think he wants to do well. And I don't think he's considering himself a title threat, but even hearing him talk at the press day yesterday, I think he's definitely right there. As far as Masterpool, one thing I wanted to add with him is he's in a better situation as far as, like Johnny was saying, he's still on that same bike, same team as last year. And now he's coming in on a 450, where last year he came in on a 250. And then he did I think it was 2 rounds on the 250, and then he switched. And so he's able to be in a better situation with that. I was listening to him talk, and even last season on his 450 was his practice bike, which goes back to what I was saying about they couldn't afford to build more 250 motors for him to practice on a 250 because it was too expensive. So he had a 450 practice bike, and that's what he ended up racing at that first race. So he ended up just throwing his 250 suspension. It was just a stock 450. So he threw his 250 suspension on his 450 and went and raced it. And then they just they never tested. They never did anything. They obviously did what they could, but it was just fly by night, whatever, figure it out. It was once he started doing well. So now he said he's been able to test a lot more, but he's been having a lot of gut health issues, and he also tore his calf muscle. So he's only been feeling kind of good for the last 3 weeks or so. So it sounds like his fitness is kind of down, but the bike is working better. So we'll have to keep an eye on, say if he comes out and he's really fast, but he's fading.
Yep.
That's something that could be fixed come mid-season. And then as far as the Justin Cooper situation, one thing I wanted to add to that is that I think that Bobby Reagan really likes Justin Cooper. Obviously, he's been there his whole career, so they have a great relationship, and I do think they want to keep him. Obviously, Eli coming back is going to be kind of the deciding factor of budget and things. And one of the things that's in Cooper Webb's contract is that his salary goes way up this year, like next year. So that's part of the problem. So I do expect to see a smaller 250 team next year. I think they're probably going to run maybe 3 guys on each coast, if I had to guess. I know they're dumping most of their riders. The only people that I know for sure are on there is Deegan, Moseman, and I think Bennick. Don't quote me on that last one, but anyways, I think Cooper wants to stay, but he wants to be paid as like an A rider. So that's why I see him.
Well, he's the Marvin Muscan now, where he's just always been the bridesmaid, even in the 250 class. But that poll ended up saying that the majority of people think that he is not going to have a perfect season. But if I add together the yeses and wins every race, just the overall, just not the motos, that is somewhat still ish a perfect season. But it's interesting now that people are a little bit more on the fence about him actually becoming tying the record with James Stewart. And didn't Carmichael, did he have 2 perfect seasons as
Yeah,
well?
he did.
Mhm.
Yeah, I believe he did too. So one last thing before we get to the 250 predictions, Tickle. How do you guys think Tickle is going to do on AC's bike coming in later in the series?
Go ahead, Shane.
Yeah, so I obviously got to see him firsthand racing the stopwatch nationals, and obviously it's a little bit hard to grade him on that. It's not that serious, and he was going against 250 guys. So from what I was seeing, he looks like he obviously can still ride. That's not a question. His fitness didn't seem to be an issue. I mean, he won the second moto. The person behind him was Ryder DeFrancisco, which eventually became Julian Beaumaire. So they were both 250 guys. So they were pushing it, especially Julian, which one quick thing to add about him, end of his second moto, fitness looked really good. His intensity was way up and he looked fast. So just keep an eye out for that. But as far as Tickle goes, it's really hard to say. He wasn't really, I don't want to say he didn't look comfortable on the bike, but he wasn't putting the bike places that, like someone who's really looked comfortable on the bike. He wasn't laying it over. He wasn't throwing it into ruts. He wasn't like Anderson, for example. He's just out there off the lip, boom, bike's over on the side, into the rut, out of the rut. So obviously Tickle, I don't think he needed to do all that. But I don't look for him to be super high intensity. I think he'll be right around that 15 to 20 range when he comes back. But if he could get a good start.
Really, you think that low?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. Obviously, it's also hard to say on the attrition of the class. So like based off of the field we have right now, obviously we see the drop off. Like there's some really good riders, and then it just kind of you saw the triple digits. But I mean, you got to consider. So we have Jett, Chase, Anderson, Cooper, Hunter Lawrence, Dylan Ferrandis, maybe Eli Tomac because he might be back by then. Justin Barcia, James Stewart, Christian Craig, Ty Masterpool, Justin Hill. That's already 12. So I think he's going to be fighting for a top 10 at best.
I disagree. I think when he comes in, he could be anywhere between podium to top 5.
I think that'd be awesome, but I'm not seeing it. I think I think a great finish for him would be a 7th or 8th. That's like a win for him.
And that's where I have him as 5 through 8 when he comes back.
Okay. All right. Well,
only because, and everybody knows this, we see it every year. When you're away from that race intensity for an extended period of time, it's, even though you're fit and even though you're riding well and you ride a lot, there's just, I mean, let's face it. I mean, he's riding with the guys on a regular basis, but it's just a different animal when you get geared up and it's under that race. I think 5 through 8 would be where he would slot in pretty consistently, which isn't, that's not a bad, we're not jabbing him in the gut on that one. I think any of us that are here on the show or in the chat room would like to be able to say that a 5 through 8 is where we'd slot in after not being on the track for 5 to 8 years or however many years he's been gone.